Hello there, my name's James Kelly and welcome along to episode 8 of the Scot Goes Popcast, and it's the 8th of May 2021, and this natural lull between the two sets of election results gives me a chance to record my thoughts. So it looks as if the SNP are going to fall 1 or 2 seats short of an overall majority, but we can't be sure of that yet. Obviously it depends on the last round of constituency results and also on the list results. I mean, in the constituencies, I suppose maybe it's an outside chance that the SNP could gain Aberdeenshire West and they would get the overall majority that way. But more realistically, you'd be looking at the list results for some signs of hope. And unfortunately, in most of the list results that have come out so far, the SNP are slightly down. There are exceptions to that. There are a few that show the SNP slightly up. So it's not going to be a huge drop in their overall list vote, but it looks like there will be a slight drop from last time. So it's hard to see where the gains in list seats will come from, but you don't know that until you see how it all shakes out. I mean, the irony here is that the SNP are actually heading for a constituency vote share that is their highest ever. You know, it's probably will be higher than in 2016. It will certainly be higher than it was in 2011 when they actually won an overall majority. So of course that raises the question of why they're probably not going to win an overall majority this time, even though in a sense they're performing better. And as you know, people will be rushing to blame Alapa for that because Alapa have taken maybe 1 or 2% out of their list vote. But obviously the much bigger issue is the Greens. The Greens did not perform well in 2011 and they are performing well now, that's what's taking the bigger share of the vote away from the SNP, and that's really the answer as to why they're not winning an overall majority. So, you know, some people were saying to Alapa supporters, no, you should be supporting the Greens instead. That's where you get the extra seats for the pro-independence majority. Well, we're going to have a pro-independence majority anyway. The only thing we're maybe going to lack is a majority for the SNP as a single party. So if that was your priority, voting for the Greens certainly wouldn't have helped. What's really happened, the reason the SNP aren't going to win an overall majority is that their list vote is too low compared to their constituency vote, and most of those votes have gone to the Greens, not to Alapa. Now, of course, some people would still say that Alapa votes were wasted and those votes should have gone to the SNP instead, but there are two problems with that. First of all, if you were going to know that Alapa votes were going to be wasted, you would have somehow had to have had a crystal ball and know what other people were doing, because it looks like in most of the constituencies it looks like Alapa are in about 1% or 2%, probably in most constituencies actually they're on 2% of the list vote, and they wouldn't have needed to do all that much better to get the odd list seat here or there. You know, if they'd been about 3% or 4% of the national vote, they could have picked up 1 or 2 seats, and if they had done, then they would have received more seats per vote than the SNP, and it would have been obvious that voting Alapa was the right thing. So you would have had to have had a crystal ball. And the other thing is that even if everybody who voted Alapa had voted SNP on the list instead, the SNP would still not have got anywhere near to their 2011 list vote. To get back to that, they would have needed a lot of votes from the Greens as well. So ultimately, people have voted Green, and that's the reason why it's impossible for the SNP probably to get to their overall majority unless something unusual happens today. The big frustration for the SNP yesterday was that they've had these 3 amazing constituency gains, but 2 of them just happen to be in South Scotland, the electoral region where they have 3 list seats, and so that means the constituency gains they got will probably just be cancelled out straight away on the list, and you'll just end up with exactly the same number of seats they would have had in South Scotland if they hadn't made those constituency gains. So if only they could have swapped the gains in East Lothian and Ayr for maybe gains in Eastwood and Dumbarton, that would have made all the difference, and they probably would have won an overall majority just because of that reason alone. But we've got to remember that there is no difference in a parliamentary democracy between a single party mandate for an independence referendum and a multi-party mandate for an independence referendum. It should be and is the same thing. The only reason it's different is there's the psychology, you know, lacking a single party majority gives the opportunity for London journalists or for the Conservative Party to crow about it and say that's somehow not a proper mandate. But if we want to solve that problem, there is one way of doing it, which is simply for the SNP and the Greens to form a coalition. And then magically, hey presto, you've got a majority government that was elected on a scrupulous, an immaculate mandate for an independence referendum, and it's a superior mandate to the one we had in 2016 because the language in the Green Manifesto was much stronger, was much more specific, and actually even the language in the SNP manifesto doesn't have the caveats that were there in 2016. So that is one possible solution, and you know, magically the majority government would actually be there. All you'd have to do is form a coalition. I know there are downsides for many people in having an SNP Green coalition, but that is something to think about. Now we should take a moment to ponder the electoral earthquake that has occurred in the Northern Isles, in Orkney and Shetland. Absolutely amazing what happened there. The SNP came relatively close to winning the constituency seat in Shetland, but they actually topped the list vote in Shetland. Just an extraordinary achievement. And in Orkney, they were only just behind the Liberal Democrats on the list vote. So that implies that in an underlying sense, the SNP are now the most popular party in Shetland, and they're not far off being the most popular party in Orkney, and that's just masked in the constituency results by the personal vote for the Liberal Democrat MSPs. So those are just a few quick thoughts about the election as we head into day 2 of the results. But keep following the blog, Scot Goes Pop, for all the latest news and commentary on the election, and I'm sure there'll be an episode 9 of the podcast at some point. So until then, see you later.